College Football 25 Road to Glory. Xavier Martinez's story is remarkable, a 5'5 running back who escaped gang life in Compton to take the field for Troy University. Despite his size, Xavier quickly showed why he was one of the shiftiest and fastest backs in the country. From his explosive debut against Nevada to his breakout moments against Memphis and Iowa, Xavier's speed and elusiveness made him a threat on every play. But his size came with challenges, including durability concerns and struggles with pass blocking, limiting his snaps early in the season. Off the field, Xavier faced mounting pressure from his past. His old gang, 6th Street, harassed him and his family, trying to pull him back into their world. This stress, combined with academic struggles, affected his play late in the year. Despite Troy's rocky 6-6 season and a quiet performance in the Hawaii Bowl, Xavier's freshman campaign stood out, finishing with several dynamic highlights and proving he belonged at the college level. Now he's looking to transfer, aiming to leave his past behind and take his talents to a bigger stage. With dreams of the NFL, Xavier hoped a move would elevate his game and put him on the radar of scouts at powerhouse programs. However, the offers that came in were underwhelming. Small schools in the Midwest or programs without a solid football pedigree. The Power 5 schools he had hoped for didn't bite. It was a harsh reality, but Xavier stayed motivated, convincing himself that another standout year at Troy could change everything. Xavier came with a new number for the time being, trying to have a fresh start to the year, playing against a Division II school from the Midwest. And Xavier's pass blocking got tested and exposed to begin this game, but he still had his trademark explosive speed and runs that made him a valuable part of the offense. But against a Division II school, his return overall to Troy was a little underwhelming, to say the least. There were some ugly plays switching field on some runs, but he did showcase his ability to be a receiver out of the backfield, something that was a part of his game his freshman year, but it wasn't exactly counted on. Either way, Xavier's team took care of business offensively and defensively with a 20-3 lead in the fourth quarter, and Troy won 27-11, and Martinez got even faster to begin his sophomore season. Troy had a David and Goliath game against number 8 Clemson and Dabo Swinney in South Carolina, and this game could be a great opportunity for X to prove his value as a transfer signing, but the game started out with the worst quarter that Xavier has probably ever played. Whether it was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, making some bad decisions on runs, or failing to block for his quarterback, Clemson was sunning the Trojans. It wasn't until the beginning of the second that Xavier and the offense started to get some momentum, but even then it wasn't enough to put points on the board. Clemson went from being up 7-0 to having a 28-point lead in the third quarter. Martinez had 2 nice extended runs on one drive in the third quarter, but he still would get pulled off the field, not being allowed to finish drives, and Troy would end up getting a field goal at best. Ultimately, Troy ended up losing 28-3. After the game against Clemson, Xavier didn't really touch the field until the second half of their game against Memphis while dealing with some lingering injuries. Xavier started the second half by getting tackled for a loss, but quickly turned things around and started giving Troy's offense a boost, which they would really need since they were trying to wrestle the lead back. X had one opportunity to start the fourth with a 50-yard touchdown run, but got caught up by his own lineman's foot. He still got the first, but down 11, Troy needed a quick score. Eventually, Troy did find the end zone, but they didn't have enough time to retake the lead, and in the end fell to 1-2. Troy and Xavier had their Week 4 game against Texas State, and with a 1-2 record, Xavier was seriously questioning his decision to come back to Troy instead of just transferring to another school, so much so that he changed his number back to 5 for good luck. And that may have done the trick, as Xavier started the game with a ridiculous screen pass for 70 yards that he took to the house. Unfortunately for him, though, he was sat for the entire second quarter to get a breather and recover. He didn't touch the field until midway through the third, but he did immediately have an impact with the defense taking notice when he was back in the backfield. This left the passing game fairly open, and Troy threw for another chunk play touchdown towards the end of the third to take a commanding 20-point lead. Xavier had one more nice run and almost got into the end zone again before getting tackled down near the 10-yard line. In response to sitting in the second quarter, Xavier also had to address his stamina. Week 5 against Wake Forest, Xavier prepared like it was just any other game, but something had clearly changed. Xavier had more energy and more durability than he ever had before, and the coaching staff noticed and adjusted. Martinez was now dominating touches in the backfield and got more opportunities in the red zone and in general. Xavier hardly stepped off the field in the first quarter while single-handedly driving his team to the red zone before busting into the end zone for a touchdown. Up until this point in his sophomore season, it didn't seem like Xavier had progressed much. In fact, before last week, his stats had regressed with difficult games against Memphis and Clemson, but everything took a turn in the previous week, and Xavier went from showing flashes of being a starter to being the star of the offense full stop. Wake Forest couldn't keep X out of the end zone as he ran in for another score to start the second quarter, and of course, this helped out his quarterback in the passing game a ton with even more eyes on Xavier. Anytime X got space, he was slipperier and more elusive than he'd ever been in the past. He came insanely close to another breakaway touchdown with the time running down before the half, but got shoestring tackled at the last second, and this led to a complete 180 2 plays plays later with Troy's quarterback getting strip sacked and Wake Forest returning it for the touchdown to tie the game at the half. But unlike in previous games, Xavier was 100% ready to go in the second half, and he continued to break off 20-yard runs, putting his offense in good position even if he started getting pulled off the field a little in the second half. Troy did lose the lead in the third quarter, but Martinez's couple of big runs put the Trojans in position for a tying score. Fast forward to the fourth quarter with a minute left, Troy had the ball down by 1 with 40 seconds left. Normally an offense would push the ball up the field by passing in this situation, but they just rode Xavier. If he picked up the first down, that would stop the clock, but they did also have all 3 timeouts. Knowing this, they wanted to get into field goal range and leave no time left for Wake Forest to do a 13-second Patrick Mahomes impression. The offense went no huddle for a play, and Xavier ran it for a first up to the 45. Later on 3rd and 2, Troy caught Wake Forest in zone, and Crowder hit his receiver to get into field goal range with 15 seconds left, securing the win and giving Troy a winning record again. Xavier ended up with a monster stat line of 190 rushing yards on 19 attempts and 2 TDs, averaging 10 yards per carry. After seeing the benefits of continuing to work on his durability and stamina, he continued to work on his endurance. In week 6, Troy got to play against ULM, a team that they lost to the previous year, so you know that X and the team wanted to get some revenge, and now ULM was even better this season with a 5-1 record. First play of the game, Xavier came out ready to go despite some lingering injuries from the previous week and training with a nice cutback to beat the linebackers over helping to the left. Since Xavier was clearly banged up in this game, it did limit his touches again, which prevented him from establishing a great rhythm, but he started the second quarter with another electric run past the 50. The offense had scored once without him already, and X thought that he had a wide open lane for a score, but couldn't believe his quarterback Crowder didn't hand the ball off to him for the read option. Crowder did make up for it by continuing to drive the ball down the field, hitting his receiver in stride down at the 2 before Martinez got a crack at running it in, and when he dove in, he front flipped over the line for the score, clearly not preserving his own health while trying to set a PR for touchdowns. The offense got stopped for a field goal before the half, and in the third, Crowder messed up another read option by fumbling, and ULM recovered. Xavier lined up outside at receiver in the third against a corner, showing that ULM had a lot of respect for his speed and route running, so Crowder looked for the linebacker mismatch on receiver inside, and this play worked perfectly. Kudos to Coach Parker, and Troy scored again for a 14-point lead. Troy ended up winning by 7 and made a dent in the ULM Sun Belt Conference lead. The passing game went off this week, and while Xavier had a respectable performance with about 100 rushing yards and a touchdown, Peyton Higgins had a huge game at receiver too. Troy was now on a 3-game winning streak, and meanwhile, back in Compton, Xavier's childhood friend Perry was getting dragged deeper into the 6th Street gang. Perry had always been a quiet supporter of Xavier's dreams, but with Xavier away and 6th Street's influence growing, Perry found himself with limited options. Pressured by local members, Perry reluctantly joined the gang to protect himself and his family. Hearing about Perry's situation weighed heavily on Xavier. He felt responsible for leaving his friend behind and feared Perry's life might spiral out of control. Despite the issues back home, Xavier was showing signs of having a breakout sophomore season at Troy. The coaching staff had given him more touches already, trusting him as the feature back, and Xavier delivered, consistently making highlight reel plays and becoming the centerpiece of Troy's offense. National media finally started to take notice, and scouts began whispering his name. Troy fans rallied behind the underdog star, marveling at how someone so small could dominate in a sport built for larger players. It seemed that Xavier's plan to raise his profile was working, and for the first time, he felt like his NFL dreams were within reach. With their winning streak on the line and a 6-point lead, Xavier had an insane dive into the end zone again this week over Georgia State defenders for a score, but Georgia State didn't go away. They actually scored and got the 2-point conversion, tying the game, and with 18 seconds left, Troy's quarterback Crowder threw a game-winning touchdown pass to Peyton Higgins, the standout receiver from the previous week, with 10 seconds left. Troy was definitely having some heart-racing games lately, but the win streak continued. But while Xavier and the team were thriving on the field, his family's life back in Compton was unraveling. His younger brother Jackie had his bike destroyed by some gang members, a clear message meant for Xavier, and a few weeks later, his father Hector's small laundry business was targeted, set on fire in the middle of the night. The attacks were escalating, and Xavier's family was terrified. Jackie begged Xavier not to come home, fearing it would only make things worse, but Xavier couldn't shake the guilt. His success felt hollow, knowing that his family was paying the price for his escape. Desperate to protect his family, Xavier made a difficult decision. He quietly rejoined 6th Street as a silent partner, hoping his involvement would stop the chaos. He promised himself it would only be temporary, just long enough to ensure his family's safety. Xavier avoided active gang activities, instead leveraging his growing platform as a football star to give 6th Street what they wanted. It was a compromise, and one that haunted him every day, but he couldn't see another way out. This affected his play again, and after he was having such an amazing streak, it almost felt like 6th Street had forgotten about him, but maybe the headlines he was making as a rising star at Troy made them remember that they had collateral to make Xavier do what they wanted. Despite a statement run for a touchdown to start the game against South Alabama, Troy went on to lose 27-14, ending their winning streak in the process. Xavier had become less focused on being a star as he worried more and more about what was going on back home, but hopefully becoming a silent partner would calm things down a bit. Now he just shoveled money to the gang and funded some of their lifestyle. He didn't rep them in any way, and that was fine for them. Xavier knew that if his coach Parker found out about him rejoining, that X would get cut from the team and all the opportunities he was starting to get would evaporate. So X just played it cool. Whenever teammates would bring up home or family of their own, Xavier simply lied and pretended like everything was okay. Martinez didn't let his teammates get close to him or know him anymore. It was just better for them and for him. This allowed him to go out and handle business on Saturdays, and while Troy's offense was suspect all game, Xavier showed up when they needed him in the fourth for a game-changing touchdown. Troy won in the final minutes 20-16 behind Xavier's performance with 11 carries for 134 yards and a touchdown. Troy had already clinched a bowl game at this point, and now they were fighting for a spot in the Sun Belt Championship game. Martinez got tackled quickly on his first run before finding space up the middle and breaking not one defender's ankles, but two before going down at the 40. Afterwards, he got pulled and the offense finished with a field goal on the drive before Xavier came in again with 3 minutes left in the second quarter. Crowder got Troy past the 50 with a pass to his tight end, but they didn't get any points from the drive. And Troy's offense was starting to sputter and struggle a little bit. Xavier's influence on the game was minimized much of the game until the fourth quarter when Coach Parker relied on him to convert first, run the clock, and extend their lead over Southern Miss. With 4 minutes left, Xavier shut the door with a touchdown, and then to add insult to injury, scored another touchdown on a run to the outside with 2 minutes remaining, giving him 2 TDs on 17 carries for 100 yards. With 2 weeks left in the season, it was nut up or shut up time against the Trojans' remaining Sun Belt Conference opponents. Troy's offense again started slow, but it also stayed slow the entire game. Martinez's impact was limited because teams really started playing the run, and while Martinez could be a game wrecker with space, if he was getting hit in the backfield, he wasn't going to be breaking a tackle at 5-5. With a score at 14-3 in the fourth, Troy fans were starting to lose hope when they started feeding Xavier the ball and he started getting some complimentary blocks. Troy did score a touchdown to make it 14-11, but Arkansas State answered and shut the game down, significantly hurting Troy's chances of making the conference championship game. After a disappointing couple of individual performances, Xavier was feeling the pressure to have a good game against James Madison. Win, and Troy is in the conference championship. Lose, and they were destined for a boring bowl game. Martinez had the most improbable touchdown of his career to kick off Troy's offense, spinning off multiple tacklers before diving into the end zone. Following that insane touchdown run, in the second quarter, Xavier almost broke an 80-yard score, but was tackled at the last second, bringing him down with a minute left in the half. Troy didn't end up scoring before the half and took a 7-point lead into the third quarter. Martinez continued to show his creative running and ability to follow blockers for explosives and eventually capped off another successful Troy drive with a diving touchdown over defenders, something that he was becoming known for. Troy finished with a dominant win 31-10 over James Madison, which stamped their ticket to the Sun Belt Championship game against Marshall. X really did have a breakout sophomore season, upgrading his elusiveness and his durability, and then finishing with his first 1,000-yard season of his career, along with 10 rushing touchdowns. Troy was now guaranteed to have 2 games left in the season, extended by the conference championship and a bowl game. Xavier knew that he was going to get first-team all-conference honors, but was waiting to see if he'd make first-team All-American too. That would seal the deal for him to transfer after this year. Marshall came into this game ranked 23rd with a 10-2 record, but this was not any ordinary Sun Belt championship game. See, initially, 6th Street was content with Xavier's presence and monetary contributions, but their demands quickly grew. They wanted inside information about Troy's players, betting lines, and anything that could give them an edge. Xavier tried to keep his involvement minimal, but the pressure mounted. His loyalty to his family and the promise to keep them safe clashed with the betrayal of his teammates. Each piece of information he passed along weighed heavier on his conscience, and Xavier knew it was only a matter of time before the wall started closing in. This development, combined with their loss to Marshall in the Sun Belt Conference Championship, really had his spirits down. He actually told 6th Street to bet on him winning conference honors, but also that he would guarantee this one time he'd get into the end zone without a doubt against Akron in their bowl game. Xavier was unusually talkative with coaches all week during practice, asking how play calling was going to work and if he could expect some consistent touches, and kept getting the same answer. Aside from our 15-play script, it really all depends on how the game shakes out, Coach Parker said. Xavier knew he needed to get into the end zone, otherwise he'd be losing members money and could face more repercussions. Xavier thought it was a safe bet to get a score, but Troy struggled to get the run game and the offense going. The one thing that was working though was the passing game. Crowder hit one of his receivers for a long touchdown pass before the half to give Troy the lead. In the third quarter, Xavier was really starting to worry about getting enough touches to score. He had made up his mind. Win, lose, or draw, he was out of Troy. Even if it was unfair, he blamed his head coach for putting him in this position. But in reality, Coach Parker had set Xavier up up for success in a number of ways. Troy again failed to put offensive possessions together and ended up punting in the third before getting the ball back with a minute left. They ran more wide receiver screens, and the running game and blocks weren't opening up. Xavier was screaming at his teammates during breaks on the sidelines for better blocks and was absolutely unjustified until Troy started losing in the game again by 3 at the beginning of the fourth. Crowder fumbled, and Troy fell behind by 10 points, and the walls were definitely caving in at this point for X. Not only was the bet not going to hit, but they finished the season losing the Sun Belt Championship and their bowl game, and he was freaking out about what 6th Street was going to do to his family and friends back in Cali. 2 hours after the game, Xavier got on a flight home with his future uncertain.